The big game is fast approaching, but wait, you still haven't got your tickets. You've spent hours searching, but you're still confused about ticket prices. Time to stop searching. Visit ticketcompare.com. We compare ticket prices for all the popular leagues and tournaments for you. We work only with the most trustworthy sites, so you can have peace of mind when buying your tickets. Compare prices, buy tickets, get to the game. Ticketcompare.com. Buying tickets made simple.
Hi, Mike. All good? Yes, fine, thank you. Yep. Harry, haven't got any water somewhere, have you?
Everyone? Roger, would you like to start? Sophie.
Hello, Roy.
Hi, Roger.
First of all, as Steve Parrish said yesterday, that a couple of potential deals look as if they're going well at this stage. Is it fair to say what knows about the human about the club?
Well, you have to ask Steve about that. I'm glad he says a few deals are going well, but I don't know about that deal in particular, and I certainly don't intend really to talk about transfer targets, because I know that Steve, in particular with Doug Freeman, they're working very, very hard to try and work out a few players or work on a few deals on players that could help us become a better squad. So I don't want to be speaking really about anything that I don't know for certain. I'll be able to confirm next week.
In terms of targets and so on, if you look at obviously people making links in terms of this player, if you look at Palace, they seem to be linked to the same players that seem to be linked to Brighton, West Ham. Is everyone competing in the same pool and everybody's in the same
Well, I mean,
area?
all you really want me to do is to tell you what you know better than me. I mean, the fact is the links come from various sources. They don't often come from the actual clubs themselves. So I presume that we're in that group of clubs where everybody realises, in particular agents and other people out there who are interested in moving players on, they realise that Crystal Palace might be a club that are looking for players. So I think that's why we get linked with everybody. And that's why when you mention the name now, he's just one of many names I've seen linked with us. But I certainly can't confirm to you their particular names that we have discussed and seriously thought about making a bid for.
In terms of that competitive market, and if it is the case that everyone seems to be going for the same players or has particular targets, what can you say to any potential player coming here that would single Crystal Palace out? What could you offer them as different?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, of course. And basically, I'm sure that every manager who's looking to sign a player will be pitching and trying to put his club in the best possible light. But I obviously believe this is a club that has very, very good potential. We're in the heart of London. I think we have a setup which would enable us, if we are able to get out of the mess that we've got ourselves into in this particular year, if we can get out of that mess, I think we're a club that could certainly move forward. I think we're a club also that already has some good quality Premiership players in our ranks. So I think anyone of good quality that's joining us will look at that, and they'll look at the players and think, well, I know he's good and I know he's got the right type of qualities to help the team move forward. So I would honestly believe that we're in quite a good position to compete against other clubs and try to persuade a player that we're the right club for him, given of course that he's within our budget in terms of transfers, and given that he's within our budget in terms of the wages we pay.
You said after the cup game against Brighton, you picked up a couple of injuries along the way, that you go into the window thinking maybe you can pick up 3 or 4, but given the circumstances, it wouldn't be wrong for you to hope to get even as many as 6. I mean, we're a couple of weeks in now. What are your realistic thoughts about how many you might be able to get through the door?
Well, our realistic thoughts after I've been in the club maybe 2 or 3 weeks was 4. That's what we were hoping, that we thought we needed that just to cover and make our squad as well balanced and as well covered as we needed it to be. So the reason I said it could go higher than that is quite simply because we've lost certainly 2 players for the rest of the season. Jeffrey Schlupp is likely to be out for quite a while, and we're uncertain as yet as to how long Ruben Loftus-Cheek will be out. So there are 4 players there that I've really counted on as being part of our first 11 even that we've lost. So I don't think it's unrealistic still to think that if we could get more than 4 players, it would be good for us. If we don't get the 4 players, then our squad's going to be short of numbers apart from anything else. we're certainly going to be weak in certain areas where we don't have the cover and the competition for places we would like, but we're also going to be actually short of numbers.
But given that we're a couple of weeks in, there's not that much time left, and there are players coming through the rear. Could it end up being a bit of a desperate scramble at the end to get those numbers?
Well, I hope not. I mean, that's not the way that I particularly want to work, and it's not the way that Steve and Doug Freeman want to work either. I think quite a lot of work is going on behind the scenes at the moment. It's just because I can't sit here today in front of you and say, yes, you know, we're just on the verge of signing X, Y and Z. That doesn't mean to say that we might not be on the verge of signing X, Y and Z. But like all managers, I guess, we prefer to wait until something is certain before we start telling you that this is a deal which is likely to be completed.
In terms of players going out, I think everyone around the club has determined that Wilfred Zaha is going nowhere. I think that's likely to be the case. But your predecessor, Frank Boyle, has been speaking this week, and he said Wilf's a top 4 player. He said a move to someone like Liverpool would be great for him. But first of all, is that right about Wilf being a top 4 player? And secondly, is it extremely unhelpful to have a previous manager setting your players off?
That doesn't bother me at all. It would surprise me, to be honest. Anybody who's asked about Wilf Zaha, if they don't say about him what I would say about him. I think he's an excellent player, and what he's done certainly for Crystal Palace during my short time has been nothing but exceptional. And I also know that he did an awful lot for Crystal Palace in the years before I came to the club. So it would surprise me enormously if people did not say Wilf Zaha is a player with a very bright future who can go far. I think it's up to us at Crystal Palace to try and keep improving our team and trying to keep persuading him that he doesn't need to move further afield to get the quality of the football he needs and to play at the level he wants to play at. So I certainly have nothing against anybody making those sort of positive comments. I would be a little bit more disappointed in managers who'd worked with Wilf Zaha if they didn't say something positive about him.
One of your earlier answers, you talked about the mess that the club got itself into at the start of this season. Do you still see it as a mess that you need to get out of?
Oh yes, I mean the fact is we're still in a relegation battle. We're not alone now. We're a little bit less isolated in our relegation battle than we were some weeks and months ago, and we're happy, of course, about that. We're not looking up at all the teams above us, but we are still in a bigger group of teams now who must be aware that unless they can keep their form going, unless they can keep points coming in, unless they can keep performances at the very highest level, they're going to be involved in a scrap to stay in the league right to the end. So that's the message that we pass on to the players on a regular basis. It's a message which up to now I think they've assimilated perfectly, but we know that the moment we drop our guard, the moment we actually start thinking that the pats on the back are something which we not only deserve but are there by our God-given right, then I think we're in enormous trouble. I think the moment we stop believing that unless we can keep our performances up to the level which I think they've been for the last couple of months, then we're going to find ourselves once again down at the bottom of the table. So it's a lesson that we have to learn, I'm afraid. Everyone would like it to be easy, but we know it's not going to be easy, and I certainly know it's not going to be easy, and I hope the players understand that too.
Got Arsenal next.
That's not easy for a start.
Not easy, but is it perhaps as good a time as any to be facing them? They seem to be having a lot of distractions in and around the club at the moment.
I think they're getting a lot of players of good quality that I know Arsene would like to see in his team coming back from injury and likely to play on Saturday, so that will make them certainly a bit stronger maybe than they've been the last couple of weeks when these guys haven't been available. They've got Jack Wilshere back in resurgent form, and I suppose the only negative for them is what's been going on around the transfer of Sanchez, or the non-transfer of Sanchez, whatever it turns out to be. I think they'll be in a very strong state on Saturday. I think that they'll be very hungry to prove the people who want to write them off wrong. I think they'll be very anxious to show their home fans what a really good football team they are and how many good players they have in their ranks. And unless we prepare ourselves for the very, very best Arsenal team that is out there, we'd be very, very foolish.
Is there sort of solidarity between sort of the long-serving managers and people who've been in the game for a long time? So when you see someone like Arsene Wenger perhaps going through one of the tougher times at the moment with criticism coming in about his results and about transfers and players and contracts and so on, did you have a degree of sympathy for Arsene?
I have a degree of sympathy and empathy for them all, young or old, so age doesn't play a part in it. I think that there are certainly managers like Arsene who deserve the utmost respect because of what he's done in the game of football, not least of all here in England. He's a record breaker in almost every category, and basically the only person in my era, if you like, who could really hold his hand up and say, you know, this guy and I are in the same category is Alex Ferguson. I think being criticised is part and parcel of it. He's been criticised many times in the past, but certainly he will never, whatever happens, he could lose the next 50 games he ever plays, but he certainly wouldn't change one bit my respect for him as a manager, my respect for him as a person, and in particular my respect for the job he's done at Arsenal Football Club, which is something quite outstanding. So it's easy for me to empathise and say good things about a guy like Arsene Wenger because I can't really understand what there is not to say that's good about him.
You mentioned earlier about the situation bringing players in to cover for injuries. Are there any injury updates from your point of view? Who's coming back or who's out?
Well, we know that Ruben Loftus-Cheek is, you know, he's facing at least another 2 to 3 weeks on the sidelines, and then again he'll be reassessed, and if that assessment could be negative as well, so that's obviously a major concern, which I didn't really have at my last press conference. As far as the others, of course, Jeffrey Schlupp is out for a long period of time. Mamadou Sakho is still out for a long period of time. But Joel Ward, who's been back in training now for 10 days, so he's available. And who was the other one that is back from training? Yeah, Yohan Cabaye.
Just finally, from the VAR was used in your cup match. We've seen it used a couple of times since. Have you had a chance to this sort of first round of trials, so I've had a look at it, and what have you made of it so far?
Exactly what I made of it when I kept being bombarded by questions before the Brighton game. Everything I said then, if you want to look it up, I still stand by, and I don't change my opinion from day to day, and I'm not really going to be prepared either to comment on every football match that's played, and a VAR decision is in question. I'm not really going to be prepared to comment on that. I'll stick to what I said, which, if you've forgotten, was very simple. I think it's a very good tool for the referees. It could be very advantageous if it does help iron out some of the most obvious wrong decisions that are made.
Has it? We've seen it used a few times. Has it achieved what it set out to do?
Who knows? It's early days. We'll wait and see.
Thank you. Mike.
Just following up on VAR from Roger's point there, just one question on that from me.
Can't I just give the same answer?
It's a bit more specific. I've just spoken to Will Sahar, who said that he was in favour of it if it was to help get forward players like himself off the hook when accusations of diving are levelled at him, as they have been in the past. Would you agree with that?
Why suddenly has the VAR just suddenly become of interest in terms of diving? I thought the VAR was there to help the referee not make a wrong decision, which in retrospect is very, very clearly a wrong decision. So if diving for me would just be one element where that could take place, but I would prefer it if it was more being used for the very, very obvious situations which the referee unfortunately on the field has missed for some reason. Mistaken identity could be a good example. He's obviously missed, and if it doesn't get rectified, it's going to be a terrible burden for him to carry and for the team to accept to have happened. I am less convinced that it can be used every time a player falls down in the penalty area or every time a ball hits somebody on their body in the penalty area. For me, I was hoping it would only be the very major decisions. It seems that from the discussions I'm hearing here, you want to use it basically for every throw-in, every corner kick and every slight decision that the referee makes, which people will contest.
Away goals were a bit of an issue for Palace earlier on this season, but since scored in your last 4 matches, including 2 at Southampton and 3 at Leicester. What's changed there?
Well, we were always creating chances, I think. Even when we weren't scoring goals, the chances were being created. We were obviously doing a little bit better at converting those chances and scoring the goals. But the players have been working hard at that aspect of their game. All the players in that front part of the field, the midfielders and forwards, have been working every day in the same way since I came to the club to try and get better in that area. And perhaps now they're getting the reward for some of the hard work they've put in terms of getting themselves into the positions and taking the chances when they come their way. But it can change again. You know, we could go for a period now without scoring a goal, and then your question will be, isn't it worrying that you're not scoring goals away from home? That's my football life. You know, we'll start scoring goals, and then not having let any in, we'll start scoring them, but then we'll be letting them in where we haven't been letting them in, and that's the way it is. That's why the job is so fascinating. Very rarely can you actually sit back and say, well, I've got this taped here now, we're never going to let any goals in and we're always going to take our goal chances. It doesn't work that way.
And just on Arsenal, 1994, I think the last time Palace won away at Arsenal, and John Solarco got 2 that day.
Very good.
Do you fear a backlash from Arsenal after the Bournemouth result for them last week?
I think there's very likely to be a reaction, because every time a team loses a game, whether they're Arsenal or whether they're a team, you know, much further down the league, you always expect the reaction, because no team likes to lose and every team likes to try and put that right as soon as possible. And basically all you're doing is reminding me that Arsenal Football Club are one of the real icons of English football, one of the great English teams. They have very good players. They've had an awful lot of success over the years, and for teams like ourselves, whenever we play them, either home or away, we know that the odds are to some extent stacked against us, and we're going to have to be at our very, very best if we're going to get anything from the game.
And just final one from me on the injury list. Would some of the new faces you might be looking to bring in be loans, perhaps towards the end of the season? This time last year, the club bought Amadou Sakho in initially on a 6-month loan, which went very well. Is that something you might look to repeat?
Well, they won't be loans from English clubs, will they? Well, not from Premiership clubs, because we're not allowed anymore. We've got 2 loans from Premiership clubs. So we don't rule anything out at the moment. We're looking at a lot of options. We're looking at a lot of possibilities, we think. And for me, whether they're loans or buys, it's up to the club to decide which is the best option in those areas. And I'm more concerned with getting the players that will help us through the door and introducing them to the other members of the squad, rather than concern myself whether it has to be a loan or a buy. Purchase perhaps would be a better word.
Yeah.
With the current problems Arsenal have got, having lost at Forest and been beaten last week in Bournemouth, is this a good time to play them?
It's always a good time to play the Arsenal because it means you're in the Premier League. It's always a bad time to play the Arsenal because they've got so many good players and such a good team that you risk defeat. Full stop.
With the form they're in at the moment.
Well, you know, I've got to take your word for their form. You know, the team that played against Nottingham Forest was nothing like the team that plays in the Premier League. And they lost against Bournemouth. Yeah, they lost the last game. That's true. But that might mean they don't want to lose the next one.
You mentioned earlier you still consider Palace to be very much in a relegation battle, as probably half the division is. But you are leading them week by week closer to being safe. If and when you do, has this been your biggest achievement, considering when you came in, where you started from? No points, no goals.
I think the time to talk about a season's achievements will be at the end of the season anyway. I don't think there's any point speculating on whether it will be a great achievement or not until such time as there's an achievement to talk about. That's the first thing I'd say. And secondly, I'm not a great lover of ranking achievements, if I'm to be perfectly honest. You know, I've had a very privileged football life. I've had some wonderful moments, moments that will always live with me, and I think that I've had some moments which I can be justifiably proud of. So I don't like to rank them and start saying this one was number 1, this one was number 4, this one was number 6. But the bottom line at the moment is We haven't achieved anything at Crystal Palace. We've achieved nothing. All we've done is, after a disastrous start to the season with 7 games, no wins, no goals, we've managed now to get ourselves in a position where we're amongst a pack of players, a pack of teams, I beg your pardon, all of whom are fighting and scrapping every week to make certain they're not one of the 3 to go down. And that's all we've done so far. And if we can continue to maintain, if you like, the type of results and performances we've had over the last month or two, if we can keep that going, then I'm certain at the end of the season we actually might be prepared ourselves to come out and say we are very happy and proud of this achievement. But at the moment we don't even think about it.
And finally, I was with Arsenal this morning, and everyone going on about Sanchez's move, and he could get £500,000 a week when he goes to Man United. 2 points to this question. One, is that obscene that one footballer now is going to be paid £500,000 a week to play football, in your opinion? And secondly, is it good for football in this country, in the Premier League, that there is now such a disparity between what a team like Arsenal could spend and what a team like Palace could spend in terms of wages?
The disparity has always been there between the top teams, because the disparity has often been between the teams that get 60 or 70,000 people through the gates with big sponsorship and the teams that get 10,000 people through the gates with no sponsorship. Now there's Sky TV money and BT TV money and more commercial money coming in. I think, if anything, that's evened out, and the way it's distributed, I think, is remarkably fair. I think you'd find it very hard to get that level of distribution of the money which comes into football throughout the Premier League in, say, Italy or Spain, where the top teams would want a much bigger slice of it. How much players earn, that depends upon the market. That's a purely commercial consideration, and I think it's very foolish for people to start. Well, foolish is probably the wrong word. I'll change that word. I'll say it's pointless for people to start discussing, wages for entertainers, because, how much should a pop singer be paid for a concert? Basically speaking, you can use exactly the same argument with regard to TV stars, movie stars, pop singers, as you can for footballers. We're in the entertainment business. At the moment, the top footballers, they're up there earning what in the past maybe only the top film stars and pop stars have earned. Is that right? Is it wrong? It doesn't matter. It's the market which decides that, and as long as the player concerned is happy with the wages he's getting, and the club paying the wages is happy to pay it, then I don't see any reason to even comment upon it.
Would you feel comfortable paying a player £500,000 a week?
I don't pay players anything. My money stays in my pocket. The money goes from. I haven't paid a player in my life and don't intend to.
Thanks, Roy.
I'm an employee.
Pete at the back.
Pete?
Yeah, Roy, Arsene Wenger, over the last few seasons, he's coming for criticism from supporters and other factors outside the game and within the game. How much do you admire him for standing his ground and not succumbing to that pressure?
I admire him most of all for the quality of the football he gets his teams playing. I admire him for the enormous longevity of his success, and I admire him for the way he handles interviews and conducts himself at all times as a representative of Arsenal Football Club.
Can you see a time, or can you see in the future then, will there be managers that stay that long at clubs? He's over 20 years now.
Well, if you take what's happening at the moment with football clubs and managers, and as you know, I'm close to the LMA. We at the LMA are concerned about the short-termism of managers' contracts and how their contracts are so rarely honoured, let alone being lengthened to timescales like Alex and Arsene have had. We're more concerned that the 2-year contract, it becomes a 4 or 5 month contract. That bothers us more. So I suppose the simple answer to that question is that if we take the example of the last, what could we say, 5, 6, 7, maybe even go back as far as 10 years. Pretty unlikely, I would think, that will happen again, but I wouldn't rule it out. There might be another Arsene Wenger or Alex Ferguson out there who can prove me wrong.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the broadcast section. Thanks very much.